Folks, welcome to Corvette Talk with Scags. You know, it seems as though the barn find has become part of our culture, and I believe the reason for that is that we all have a nostalgic streak. Some of us like old photographs, some of us like old architecture. For some it's coins or stamps. For a lot of us it's vehicles. I'm guilty of all the above. Here in New England, there's old stuff all over the place. My son and I are always combing through old foundations and old cellar holes, looking for antique bottles and artifacts. And believe me, there's a lot of barns up here as well, many that haven't been opened in decades. But usually when it comes to an automotive barn find, if someone comes and tells me, hey, I found a barn find, blah, 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 I usually advise them, hey, you know what? Push that car back into the barn and go get one that's in better condition. And the reason is that to get that car up and running, to get it in decent condition, more often than not is going to exceed the value of the car. But no matter how you slice it, barn finds are here to stay, so much so that they've become a market segment. So for today, let's look at some Corvette barn finds. We got our Centennial Edition Z06 out here. We're going to pop the trunk, and we're going to look at some Corvette barn finds. Folks, the term barn find is really a metaphor, because a lot of these things are found in fields or prairies, or in shipping containers or in the woods. So you don't need a barn for a barn find. Anyway, let's start off with The Hemi in the Barn. It's a book by Tom Cotter. This guy is the auto archaeologist man of the decade. This C1 just happened to be 1955 VIN number 1, and I wrote happenstance there because that's exactly what it was. This individual went to buy this car, and he was looking for the VIN tag. The owner, the seller, had no idea where the VIN tag was. It's usually on the steering column on these, and it turns out that the VIN tag was inside the door jamb, and it turns out that, hey, guess what? This just happened to be VIN number 1 for a 1955. It's in terrible condition, but I guess this one turned out to be a decent investment. Folks, some of these cars you'll recognize, some of them you won't. Some of them turned out to be decent investments. Some of them are just great stories, so I included them. So that's number 1. Number 2, let's go to Jerry Heasley's rare find. You guys must think I have a man crush on Jerry Heasley. I hawk more of his stuff than his mother does. Okay, let's start with, we all know this car. This was the Rebel L88. This is what it looked like when it was found by Kevin McKay. It was a lightweight race car found in a junkyard, and Kevin bought it for $7 grand. Okay, it turned out that this was a very good buy. But keep in mind that Kevin's got his own shop with his own employees and was able to take this is how he found it, and turn it into something a little more special. There's some more pictures on the following page there. Let me move the book for you. That's the inside. That's what it looked like. All right, so the bottom line is here for you and me and, you know, people that aren't in the know, it might just look like a piece of junk, but it turned out to be not a piece of junk. Kevin sold it, I believe, for $750,000. That person turned around and sold it for nearly $3 million. So as you can see, sometimes barn finds are worth it. This is an interesting one, too. You guys know this from one of my previous videos. This is the Le Mans race car winner. The owner didn't want to sell it. Kevin had to use an alias. So Kevin McKay also procured this car for Chip Miller, founder of Bloomington Gold. That's what it looked like. Okay, C1s, it's important to note, C1 race cars were not that special at the time. So it was made more sense for them to turn the cars back into street cars. So this was the Le Mans winning Corvette under a coat of red paint. Okay, and here's what it actually was when Kevin finished restoring it. I had it on the cover of $1 Million Vets because it sold somewhere in the neighborhood of that. Kevin did all the work, found it, and like I said, he had to use an alias because at that point, he had become well known as someone who was finding these Corvettes and restoring them. So to acquire this one, I guess he had to pull some shenanigans. Anyway, there's Chip Miller. A very important car. So that one turned out to be profitable as well. Like I said, some of them do, some of them don't. But like I said, keep in mind that these were not important. So after a C1 was done being a race car way back in the day, they'd paint it and put it right back up for sale. So moving on from there, we go to a vet magazine here. I don't even know what's in here half the time. Okay, this one. All right, this was a very special car. This was a 1957 fuel-injected Vet with the airbox, which was like a special type of air injection. Had special brakes, special belts. It was a friend of a friend, and bought at a car show. And okay, so here it is. Someone bought this car and did some sleuthing around. He paid a reasonable price for it. Was talking to someone at a bar. That's how we found out it was for sale. It turns out that this was a very special car. Okay, it was a 1957 Fuelie, and it had all the important points inside the car that pointed it to be a very special Vette. So that one turned out to be a financial success for that individual as well. So this guy knew that what he might have been looking for, the special brakes, the special seat belts. So they had quite a surprise. I actually have seen this car in person, and it's a stunning race car that won many races in the past. And now it's a more of a show car. But there you go. So this guy and his brother bought this car, had no idea what it was, and it turned out to be something pretty special. So it wasn't found in a barn, wasn't found in a field. It was just a regular purchase that turned out to be something pretty special. This one's kind of cool. 1978 pace car with 13 miles. It was found in a storage warehouse. Okay. So I guess sometimes article by Jerry Easley. Oh my gosh. So sometimes you just have to be you just have to keep your eyes open. So that's that one. I'm gonna move along here. Okay, 59 Fuelie. Here's another one. Okay, this was a car that was found. A guy did really had to do some archaeology. It was his father's car. And I guess he really wanted to own his father's car, and he did some sleuthing. And as you can see, this one actually wasn't a barn. Like, oh my gosh, take a look at that. Really, you want to restore that? Anyway, some people, for some people it's for financial gain. For some people it's for nostalgia. For some people it's just fun. This guy just wanted this car because it was his dad's, which is kind of a cute story, and I think that's why I picked that one out. There's that one. Not this one. This car turned out to be the Purple People Eater, which is a very famous, successful race car. And this one was, your typical situation. It was a race car. I guess race cars really had no value back then. This is what it looked like. Here's Chip again. He owned a lot of really awesome Vettes in the time. So yeah, sometimes people don't know what they have, and it takes a real professional to find these things, restore them, and get them back into special shape. Folks, lest you think that barn finds have all been found, field finds have all been found, there's nothing else out there for you. Let me tell you what me and my son found. For a couple of weeks ago, I took some days off from work, and I spent some time with my son. This is some of the stuff that we found. Okay, we found a late '40s Willys Jeepster. Okay, we found an International Travelall from the early 50s. Okay, very cool. They're expensive now. This was one that I was just crazy about. This is one that I would have liked to have acquired and see if I could do something with. We found a Chrysler wagon. It was an early 50s Chrysler wagon, and it was a barrel back wagon, a beautiful vehicle. We also found an AMC Matador wagon from the 70s. We also found a Chevy flare side pickup from the 60s. Then we found a Chevy short bed pickup from the 60s, and we also found a Volvo wagon from the 80s. Wait, we're not done yet. We found the whole front end for a 66 Chevelle. We found the grille for a Pierce Arrow. We found the cab for a 30s Ford. We found the body of a 40s Chevy pickup. And not to mention, this is something, I think this is a lot of what happens with barn finds. People just get used to seeing them. There's a house 2 doors down, okay, theoretically speaking, 2 doors down here where we live is actually a couple of miles away, but there's a Hudson sitting in the backyard. Okay, and then there's also a bus in the woods up here, and there's a trolley in the woods up here. But I'm not done yet, because you might say, this is Corvette Talk with Scags. Any Corvettes? And the answer is yes. I found, and this is very interesting, I was out on my route, and this was down in Connecticut, and I saw a barn, and a lot of barns up here don't have doors, so this is actually kind of interesting. I peeked around, and what's in there? A 1973 big block convertible, and it was a day 2 convertible. What we mean by day 2 is a youngster would buy a Corvette or a car or any Camaro, and the second